It's May 1947. 5 prisoners of war in Soviet Russia are promised freedom if they participate in an experiment. They're told all they have to do is sit in a sealed room for 30 days without sleeping, and that's all they have to do to be freed. Unknown to them, the room is being filled with a stimulant gas, making the participants unable to sleep. And what follows is chilling. Our story begins in the late 1940s. Russian researchers have created a stimulant that they believe is capable of keeping a person awake for long times, and they plan to use it for military applications to keep their soldiers awake for long periods of time. But first, they have to put it to the test with test subjects. So they turn to prisoners of war. 5 World War II political prisoners deemed as enemies of the country were selected and promised freedom if they can stay awake for 30 days. They were sealed in a small chamber and exposed to an experimental gas stimulant to keep them awake, and were monitored through cameras, microphones, and an inch-thick glass window. They were provided with a month's worth of food, running water, a toilet, beds, and some books. The scene is set. For the first 3 days, the men seem in good spirits and with almost no problem. The gas seemed to be working. After 5 days, the discussions between the subjects started to get really emotional as they revealed their inner thoughts. The subjects started to talk about the horrors of war, previous traumas, and continuous nightmares. After 6 days, things started to take a really dark turn. They started getting paranoid, talking to themselves and things that were not there, blaming each other for getting stuck in there and telling stories about the other subjects. After 9 days, one of the subjects just started screaming and running up and down the chamber, shrieking in terror, so much so that after some hours, he was only squeaking. Later on, it was discovered that he screamed so hard, he completely tore his vocal cords while he was screaming. 2 of the other captives were observed quietly tearing pages from the books they were given, defecating on them, and then sticking them to the thick glass window of the chamber until the scientists could no longer look in and observe the subjects through the window. The researchers, of course, knew a lot about sleep deprivation and the very real or horrifying hallucinations that come with it. But was it the lack of sleep or the gas itself that was causing these men to go mad? After about 15 days into the experiment, there was total silence. The subjects could no longer be seen through the monitors, and since the researchers could no longer look in through the window and observe the subjects, they were unsure about their status and were concerned if the subjects were unconscious. So at midnight, they decided to open the chamber. They sent a message through the intercom saying, "We are opening the chamber to test the microphones. Step away from the door, lie down flat on the floor, or you will be shot. Compliance will earn one of you immediate freedom." After a moment of silence, a voice crept back through the intercom saying, "We no longer want to be freed." The researchers displaced the gas in the chamber with fresh air and proceeded to open the door. When the scientists entered the chamber, they were greeted by unpronounced horror. The subjects had chunks of flesh ripped from their arms and their legs. Their fingers showed exposed bones. The food that was provided was not well eaten, but their mouths had blood dripping from them. There were indications that these horrific wounds were self-inflicted with their bare hands. They tore skin and muscle from their own chests, and some of them had so much flesh stripped from their bodies that their rib cage could clearly be seen and their internal organs visible. Each man had done this to himself. They were eating themselves, and they were doing it with enthusiasm. The men then started to scream again, pleading for more gas. This sent them into a frenzy. They attacked the scientists and guards. One of the guards trying to stop the subjects had his testicles ripped out with bare hands. The others had their throats ripped out. 5 guards were killed. Some of the subjects took their own lives after the event. Attempts to sedate them with morphine were ineffective. It is almost as if their bodies were rejecting any drugs. One of them had enough morphine injected into him to sedate a Canadian moose, but they were still struggling and begging for the gas. 2 of the subjects had died, so there were 3 remaining. The remaining 3 were restrained and tied up, but they were still begging for the gas, refusing painkillers or anything of the such. They were also begging that their organs be put back, and without any painkillers. The first subject to be operated on died due to blood loss. The second man, the one who had lost his vocal cords earlier, just kept smiling at the nurse as surgery was being performed on him. After the surgery ended, he became angry and demanded, by writing on paper, that the surgeon should keep cutting. The third subject just lay there groaning. Of the original 5, 3 of the subjects were dead and 2 were still alive. After treating the subjects as best as they could, the researchers received an order to put the 2 remaining subjects back in the gas chamber. One of them just fell asleep and passed away. The other grew impatient, broke free from his restraints, grabbed a gun and shot 2 researchers. He was overpowered, and one of the researchers grabbed a gun, pointing it at the subject, and asked, "What are you?" The subject replied, "Have you forgotten so easily? We are you. We are the madness that lurks within you all, begging to be free at every moment in your deepest animal mind. We are what you hide from in your beds every night. We are what you sedate into silence and paralysis when you go to tread the nocturnal heavens." The scientist shot the test subject, and as he lay down, he uttered his last words, "So nearly free." So this is the Russian sleep experiment. This is identified and recognized as just a fictional story. There's absolutely no denying that if a country could find a way to keep their soldiers awake for long, they will. The story is considered as fiction, but a similar thing could have been possible or influenced by historical events. Some of the things that give this story away is a human cannot rip out vital organs and still be alive. He would die of blood loss very quickly. There is no history of the experiment anywhere, but on a website that's known for its scary and fictional tales.